So starting off in ArcGIS Online, we have our tree inventory dataset here, just keeping it simple with a relatively small dataset, so around 10 records. But each of these records has an attachment associated with it. So each record is going to have an image that relates to the tree itself. So in our workspace, our first step here is to read our existing data. So this is that same data set you just saw in ArcGIS Online. The reason we need to read in this data set is because, first we want to write that data over to Snowflake, but we also need those object IDs to feed into our ArcGIS attachment connector. So we'll write over to Snowflake first, and then we'll read in those attachments. We'll go into Snowflake and take a look at the table quickly. So after we've written our data, you can see we also have an attachment ID field. So we're going to fill this out later once we migrate our documents over to Snowflake. This first attachment connector is listing all our attachments. So it's going to do this row by row for each object ID that we're providing it. And we're using our REST URL here as our feature service URL. And then once we've run that, you can see we have attachment IDs. The next step is to then download the attachments themselves. So we've set it to the download action. We're again using the same feature URL. We're providing that attachment ID as the attribute. And we also want to download our files as attributes. And I'll pause this for a second. The reason we want to download our files as attributes is because it allows us to control the name that we're outputting our data to. So if we were to just download with the attachment connector, we would get the same name as the attachments themselves are named in ArcGIS Online. But we want to have control over the file name because we need to provide it with an ID so that we can connect it and provide that relationship between our Snowflake table and the documents in the Snowflake stage. So that's what we're going to be doing in our attribute creator. We're setting the output file path, and we're setting the file name to have that tree ID and the attachment name. And then we're using a string replacer. We just need to make sure that all our backslashes are replaced with forward slashes. And that's just a requirement of the Snowflake SQL statement for loading data into the Snowflake stage. And here we're using an attribute file writer. So this allows us to take that binary data and write it out to files in our local directory. The last step here is to use a SQL statement to upload our data to the stage. So we have a stage called attachment stage in Snowflake, and it's just the matter of a simple put statement to load that data into the Snowflake stage. So we'll run this. And you can see it's executing those SQL statements, and it's loading those documents up into our stage. So let's go take a look at our stage. We'll scroll down, open up our stages. You can see we have our attachment stage here. And let's refresh the page. And now we have each of our attachments in there. And you can see they also have the prefix tree ID as well, so we can relate them to each record in our table. So that's what we're doing with this last attribute creator here. We're creating that essentially the name of the attachment and where it exists. So it's in the attachment stage with the file name and the tree ID prefix. And we're going to be updating our table, and we're just updating that attachment ID field. So let's click run on this. That's going to update our tree IDs, or sorry, the attachment IDs. And then we'll go take a look in Snowflake in a second, and just to make sure that those IDs were written there as well. So let's refresh our table, and you can see those attachment IDs were updated.